It's that time again. I'm Eric, and I'm bringing you another exciting episode of the Paperback Warrior podcast. You can check out paperbackwarrior.com to hear the prior 114 episodes, as well as over 1,500 reviews of vintage paperbacks and comics. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. In keeping to the Paperback Warrior tradition of 20th century crime fiction writers, today's first feature is on author Louis Trimble. Or maybe it's Louis. Louis or Louis. I think I'm going to go with Louis. He wrote pulp stories, science fiction, westerns, mysteries, and nonfiction. He wrote around 80 novels and also served as an instructor and professor at the University of Washington. I'm excited to delve into his career in books and also a brief history of his wife Jacqueline, who is also an author. Also, I'm presenting a second feature today. It's on a vintage paperback publisher called Cardinal Editions. They were an imprint of pocketbooks and published paperbacks between 1951 to 1959. It's an interesting history. I'll also review a vintage Gothic mystery hardcover titled Annalisa that was originally published in 1959. The book is back in print now thanks to Cutting Edge Books, complete with an awesome cover. We've got a lot to get into today, but first, I'd like to offer another entry in a segment I created on the last episode called Review the Reviewer. I'm reviewing all of my favorite YouTube channels and presenting their information here for you. How to watch them, what they cover, the format, and what puts them in my daily watch list every single week. This episode's Review the Reviewer is the book Graveyard. I found out about this channel from a listener that reached out to me from North Carolina last year. He suggested I try the channel out for vintage fiction reviews that are in the wheelhouse of Paperback Warrior. Turned out he was exactly right. The book Graveyard is hosted by Nick Anderson. Nick originally lived in Arizona. He just recently moved to Ohio. He likes punk rock, has a record label and a great record collection, but trumping all of that is his massive book collection. He's got a lot of vintage paperbacks across a multitude of genres. I think his favorites may be the Monarch paperbacks. I see those quite a bit. He typically has at least one video up each week where he reviews 2 to 3 books. He also has a monthly video where he shows what books he acquired that month, either at used bookstores or through trades or freebies. He also links up to 2 other YouTube channels, which I'm going to get to in future episodes. One is called Secret Fire Books, and the other is called Pulp Mortem. Together, those 3 hosts do a show called the Elusive Exclusive Book Society, where they review a book on each episode. You can type into YouTube the book Graveyard, and his channel will come up. He also has a blog where you can read his cool reviews, and you can find it all at the bookgraveyard.blogspot.com. So go check Nick out. He's a great guy. All right, so how about we jump into today's feature? Since we're going to be doing 2, I'll jump into the first one now. Let me just key up some music. Okay, as I mentioned in my opener, today's feature is on author Louis Trimble. He was a prolific author that seemed to excel in the science fiction genre, but honestly, he wrote just about everything, including action, adventure, and crime noir. This feature was really difficult to research because Trimble's personal life, well, it just isn't out there. Not a lot has been written about him, but his books are seemingly everywhere. He's been published by just about every company in terms of vintage fiction. It makes it really hard to even drill down to an exact bibliography because there's just so many publishers involved. But let's try to at least get an overview. Louis Trimble was born in Seattle, Washington in 1917. He worked as a logger and a house painter. He attended universities in Washington State and Pennsylvania. His first published story was His Wooden Overcoat, published in 10-Story Detective Magazine in October of 1938. Trimble stayed active in contributing to the pulps. In 1939, he had 3 stories published in the detective pulps. He had 2 more in 1940. But then after that, he took a break from the pulp market for 8 years to develop his writing as a mystery novelist. And that's really saying something because we're talking about the height of the pulp era, the 1940s. And he pretty much took that whole decade off to sort of craft his novel career. Almost all of his first 30 books were crime fiction and mysteries. I'm not going to go through every one of his books and publishers, but just to give you an idea of when his novelist career began, it was the 1941 book Fit to Kill, which was published by Phoenix in hardcover. He followed a year later with another Phoenix-published hardcover titled Tragedy in Turquoise, which was reviewed by the New York Times, who said, quote, "A conventional story, certainly not a distinguished one, but we've read worse," unquote. Also in 1942 was his first paperback, Date for Murder. It was published by Mystery House as a digest-sized Mystery of the Month selection. With two books published in 1942 under his real name, he opted to create a pseudonym of Gary Travis to publish another novel in 1942 titled Tarnished Love, although I don't know who the publisher was. The Gary Travis name is Gerry, so Gary Travis. In 1945 was Design for Dying, published as Bart House Mystery, with the blurb at the top stating that this is a reprint of a Pat Durbin mystery. So that's a mystery to me. I'm assuming that this was a private eye character that Trimble had at some point, maybe in the pulps or something. But I know that the character wasn't in any of the author's first three books. So I'm not really sure who Pat Durbin is. Also in 1945 was Murder Trouble, published in paperback as a Black Cat Detective Series book. The author had two books published in 1946, one as a Dagger House mystery paperback and another as a hardback by Superior Publishing Company. In 1948, Trimble's first novel was published under his pseudonym Stuart Brock. I've seen that name before. The book was Death is My Lover, published in paperback by Red Seal. He followed that a year later with another Brock-written one titled Just Around the Corner, like doing autopsies, just around the corner, as a Dell paperback. Altogether, Trimble was published at least 7 times using the name Stuart Brock, and these were published by the likes of Dell, Graphic, Ace, Pyramid, and also there were 2 westerns, or at least 2 westerns in that list as well, written by Stuart Brock. By 1948, Trimble has authored 11 published novels, all mysteries and crime fiction. He then goes back to the pulp market to write those stories as well as full-length novels. He started delving into the sports story market. He authored 5 sports stories in 1948 in magazines like Complete Sports and Sports Action. In 1949, he writes another sports story, followed by 2 more in 1950 and 6 in 1951. Keep in mind, he's only writing sports stories for the pulps during this 3-year period. No other types of pulp stories, just sports only. That's interesting. By the late 1940s, Trimble's beginning to delve into the Western market. His novel Valley of Violence was published by Bantam in 1948, which sort of kick-started his Western writing. In the 1950s, it saw Trimble publish at least 14 novels across mysteries and westerns. However, 2 of his novels during this decade are spy books, starring a guy named Paul Knox. The books were Stab in the Dark, published in 1956, and The Big Bite in 1957, and he again used the pseudonym of Gary Travis to write The Big Bite. According to Spy Guys and Gals, which is the authority on spy fiction, Paul Knox is an agent with the World Circle Agency. This is just really a glorified private eye firm with the ability to investigate cases worldwide. Spy Guys and Gals gave the series a B, with both books being just okay. Also by the mid-1950s, Trimble is mostly out of his sports story phase, and now he's focusing on Western pulps. Beginning in 1952, Trimble has 16 stories published in the pulps, of which half of those are westerns. Only 4 were crime fiction, but of note is the first Trimble science fiction story. It was titled Probability and appeared in If magazine in April of 1954. Now, in 1952, Trimble marries Jacqueline Whitney. Now, she was born in Portland, Oregon in 1927, and she was educated at the University of Washington, where she earned her bachelor's and master's degrees. My guess is that Louis Trimble must have met her while he was a student or maybe even teaching at the University of Washington. They both attended there. In the 1960s, Trimble had at least 10 books published, and his wife Jacqueline authored and published her first novel as well, the 1964 Gothic romance book, The Whisper of Shadows. She wrote the book using the name J.L.H. Whitney, and it was published by Ace. And when I was researching this, I could remember that title, and I looked back. I had bought that book last summer on my New England book shopping tour, and I had it in one of the videos. And I didn't realize who the author was until I researched this feature. Now let's pause here in the 1960s to just catch up for a moment. On the mysteryfile.com online review for Trimble's first novel, there's a comment from a man named Carl Drobnik who claims he was good friends with Louis Trimble. On Carl's website, he has an article about Trimble's life. He quotes Trimble as stating this in 1977, quote, "I wrote 30 mystery novels and got bored. So I started writing westerns, and after 30 of those, I switched to science fiction." End quote. So his quote sort of sums up where we are right now in this feature in Trimble's career. He's authored crime fiction and westerns, and as we learned earlier, he had a sports story phase of his pulp career, and he wrote stories in the pulps. Now he just wants something different, so he jumps into the science fiction market. His first science fiction novel is the 1968 book Anthropol, published as an ace double. He followed that in 1970 with another ace titled The Noblest Experiment in the Galaxy. In 1972, Louis Trimble and his wife Jacqueline team up to write the science fiction novel Guardians of the Gate, which was also published in Luna Monthly's December 1972 issue. Trimble authored 4 more books in the 1970s, and they were all science fiction. Carl Drobnik offers an interesting commentary on Trimble's novel The City Machine. He states that this sci-fi thriller brought the author his greatest fame. The book was published during the deep freeze of the Cold War, and the Eastern European readers adopted this book as a type of symbolic example of Marxism and what they perceived as the inevitable fall of corrupt capitalism. The novel was translated into Polish, Czech, German, Hungarian, and sold throughout the Soviet Union. But during the Cold War, royalties couldn't be transferred out of those countries, so the money just piled up in frozen bank accounts. Trimble became an instructor and professor at University of Washington, and he rose in academic circles with his talent for linguistics. According to Drobnik, the U.S. State Department was searching for cultural and educational missionaries into the Soviet countries, and Trimble was able to get involved with that program. So he traveled into the Soviet bloc doing seminars on linguistics. He told Drobnik, quote, "I can spend as much of the loot as I want while I'm in the country. I take a few days vacation at the end of one of the seminars, and I live well for a week. When I'm there, they know me as the novelist Louis Trimble and are surprised by my work in rhetoric. Here in the U.S., people knew me as a linguistic and are surprised that I wrote novels." End quote. Louis Trimble died in March of 1988. Now, Mike Grost writes on the GA Detection blog that Louis Trimble's crime fiction mostly resembles the quality of a writer like Harold Q. Masur, but you can easily find and read Louis Trimble today to determine how you feel about the writer's work. Prologue Books, man, they went all in on this author. Doing a quick scan on Amazon, I see that Prologue has 24 of his novels available as cheap ebooks, or even free to read using Kindle Unlimited. So just be sure to check those out to see if you like his writing. A few of his westerns written as Stuart Brock are available for free on archive.org. From what I could gather, Trimble has been published by Red Seal, Black Cat Detective Series, Graphic, Ace, Pyramid, Prologue, Doll, Phoenix, Bart House Mystery, Wonder Book, Thorndike Press, Gunsmoke Westerns, Bantam, Sharon Publications, Airmont, Priori, and Resurrected Press. And many of those that I just mentioned are all reprints. So this guy is readily available. You can read his stuff. So my references for this Louis Trimble feature was the aforementioned Spy Guys and Gals, mysteryfile.com, Carl Drobnik's WordPress blog, archive.org, Fiction Mag Index, the GA Detection blog, and the official paperback price guide by John Warren, and also the Internet Speculative Fiction Database. So, we're going to turn the script page to the second feature of today's episode. I promised you a second feature, and this one isn't nearly as long. This is a quick little mini feature on Cardinal Editions. So in the early 20th century, a lot of publishing houses created specialty imprints so they could charge a little extra for their paperbacks. For example, Fawcett Gold Medal created Red Seal in 1952. The idea was that the extra dime or more on the cover price meant more pages in the book. Graphic Press did it with their giant imprint. Pocket Book, which began publishing pocket-sized paperback books in 1939, did the same thing. In 1944, the founding owners of Pocket sold the business to Marshall Field III, who at the time was the owner of the Chicago Sun newspaper. To help bolster the sales, they created the idea of a more expensive 35-cent paperback imprint titled Cardinal Editions. This was a dime more than the standard quarter price tag of the pocketbook. The spines of these Cardinal editions still had that familiar gold coloring, but a bright red cardinal was affixed above the cover's price tag with the wording Cardinal Edition. The top had a serial number beginning with the letter C, and then a hyphen, and then the number of the book. The regular 25-cent pocketbooks, they switched to a silver spine to just differentiate themselves between that and the Cardinals. The first Cardinal edition paperback was William Shakespeare's four great historical plays, which was Richard III, Henry IV in two parts, and Henry V. As an example, the top serial number is C-1. It was followed by King's Row by Henry Bellarmine, and then In Tragic Life by Vardis Fisher. According to John Warren in the official paperback price guide, the most collectible of the Cardinal editions was Nelson Algren's The Man with the Golden Arm, which was released with a dust jacket. Other notable books was a Marilyn Monroe expose. Now, the first Cardinal editions consist of 458 total books, and that goes C-1 all the way through C-458. There's one additional book after book number 458, which is oddly listed as C-1138. It's The Case of the Fugitive Nurse by Earl Stanley Gardner. The reason why is it shares the same number as the pocketbook Silver Spine edition, and I'm not sure why. Of these 458 books, here's just a few that caught my eye just quickly on the list. A.B. Guthrie's westerns like The Big Sky and The Way West. Ernest Haycock's The Earthbreakers and the Adventurers. Harold Robbins' A Stone for Danny Fisher, which, if you'll remember, that was adapted into a movie starring Elvis. Blackboard Jungle by Evan Hunter. Odds Against Tomorrow by William P. McGivern. And there's also plenty of Ellery Queen, Max Brand, Earl Stanley Gardner, Agatha Christie, Zane Grey in the series as well. In 1952, inflation created pocketbooks Cardinal Editions Giants, which sold for 50 cents. They have the same look other than the serial number at the top is GC and then the hyphen and then the number. So GC-1 was The Cardinal by Henry Morton Robinson. There are 238 of these with numbers GC-1 through GC-238. Then there's 93 more Cardinal Edition giant paperbacks released, but the serial numbers, they're just all over the place. They don't make any sense. While the Cardinal 35-cent and 50-cent editions were being offered, Pocket also had a type of hybrid book that they simply titled Pocket Cardinals. These were the size of regular pocketbooks, but still had the same price as a Cardinal edition at 35 cents. It doesn't make any sense just from the dynamic of it. It's a higher priced pocketbook with no extra pages. There were 23 of these books published, and again, the serial numbers, they don't make any sense. My references for this was bookscans.com and the official paperback price guide by John Warren and the archived site Hyde Park Books. And that is a wrap on those two features. And I've got one more segment left in this episode, which is a book review. All right, so today's book review is a 1959 mystery novel titled Annalisa. Now, this was originally published as a hardcover with a terrible cover. It then just went out of print for 63 years, just disappeared. Thankfully, Cutting Edge Books located the book and resurrected it. You can now get the book in both digital and paperback editions, and I must say, I like the book cover. This old mansion lit up and then Annalisa's face at the top. You can just see some trees and shadows surrounding the mansion. I actually like this one as a modern cover. Annalisa was authored by Forbes Rydell, but this was actually two people, Dolores Stanton Forbes and Helen B. Rydell. The two had writing careers on their own, but they also collaborated together on 4 total novels between 1959 and 1963. So with Annalisa, the book's main character is Dana Hebert. He takes a leave from the military to return to his hometown in Louisiana. His younger brother, Claude, is marrying a childhood friend named Annalisa. It's Dana's hopes that he can convince Claude and the family to cancel the wedding to secure his brother's safety and sanity. But at the beginning of the book, we just don't know why he has this resentment for Annalisa. The book's got an excellent atmosphere. I mean, it's got the Southern Gothic vibe to it with a swaying Spanish moss, the large mansion, and it's got an old cemetery. And the book gets somewhat spooky at times. Through murky flashbacks, readers learn that Dana and Claude's parents were murdered by Annalisa's mother in a jealous rage. She basically just goes into the family's library. She meets the parents there. She apparently confronts the husband about an affair she's having with him. Then she shoots both of them and kills herself. The two brothers are taken by the county and shipped to, you won't believe this, they get shipped to Annalisa's grandmother's house. In those days and in Southern tradition then, the grandmother feels responsible that her daughter-in-law, which is again Annalisa's mother, killed Dana and Claude's parents. So she feels obligated to raise their sons, which is nice. But if you're Dana and Claude, you got to be like, we're living with the family that murdered our parents. Now Annalisa's father, he died a long time before all this. So Annalisa is also without parents. So it's here in this half castle that the two befriend young Annalisa, and the three of them grow up together. Dana's present-day reunion is met with stiff opposition from Claude. He's like a frustrated young man. He's an artist, and he feels like his brother is actually in love with Annalisa, and that's why he doesn't want the wedding to happen, which is really the case, in a way. The grandmother seems to know more about the brother's past, but she's withholding murderous secrets from the family. Additionally, Grandma's sister, her name is Celia, she warns Dana that a killer is stalking the halls of this mansion that they're all living in. She says that someone comes in the night and wiggles her doorknob, and she asks the maintenance man to install a new lock on the door to protect her. As the wedding gets nearer, Dana goes over to his former childhood home. This is the mansion where his parents were murdered in the library. This mansion now lies empty. It's crumbling down. There's a creepy atmosphere as he's just walking around over there trying to get his head straight. There's a lot of things going on in this book, but the central basis is what really happened the night the parents were murdered. Did Annalisa's mother really kill them? Or did little Claude kill his parents? Or little Annalisa? What Dana really knows isn't revealed until the last few pages, which is fine because that's the type of novel this is. You want to be in the dark through most of it so the mystery can unravel itself in an enjoyable way. So what Dana knows, he keeps from the reader until the end. I've got a written review of this book going up later this month. This is what I wrote at the bottom of that review. Annalisa is a well-written, patient Southern Gothic that dangles all the answers just a few inches from the captivated readers. As the narrative unfolds, the mysteries of Dana and Claude's family is unveiled in a rewarding fashion. The old cemetery, cavernous mansion, and sweeping Spanish moss provides just enough rainy day atmosphere to enhance this enjoyable mystery. If you love Mignon G. Eberhardt, Elizabeth Sansay Holding, and Elizabeth Fenwick, then Annalisa is sure to please. And I'm pleased with this episode, if I do say so myself. I put a lot of research into this one, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode. At the time of this recording, I still don't know what that one's going to be about yet. I've mostly tried to stay true to our roots this year with features on vintage authors, mostly crime fiction and pulpsters, but I'm going to dig around and see what else I can come up with. Hopefully I'll also have some more conversations with authors and publishers, or maybe some more collaborations with other podcasts as well. So hopefully you'll get on board with those as well. In the meantime, be sure to check paperbackwarrior.com often. Feel free to donate, and as always, enjoy whatever it is you're doing. I'm going to see you next time.